This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. There are about 92,000 students with disabilities across Connecticut. That's according to the state's Department of Education. These students can experience many challenges in the classroom, from discrimination to a lack of accommodations. So, how can schools help students with disabilities feel a greater sense of belonging? That was one of the questions at a special summit hosted by the state's Department of Education in November. This event brought together students, educators, parents, and more to highlight the experiences of students with disabilities and how we can better support them. Today, we're airing some of the panel that I moderated at the summit. You'll hear from several students, advocates, and educators this hour. Luna Montanero and Madeline Haggerty are high school students in Connecticut. Ryan DaCosta is the Youth Engagement Coordinator at the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. Lily Watkins is a member of the Connecticut Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board with the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. Julia Kuchtub is also a member of the Connecticut Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board with the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. And Philip Shankman is the advocate and presenter with the State Education Resource Center.
Hi, I'm Philip Shankman. I'm 22. I'm from Simsbury, Connecticut. I am currently a master's student at Curry College studying special education. I was extremely lucky that I grew up in a very good district here in Connecticut for special education services, and I felt supported my entire K through 12 experience, as well as when I was doing the transition from high school to college, I still felt that support. And I was lucky even when there were the moments where I wasn't really getting all that good of a support, because I had a lot of support around assistive technology. There were moments, especially before the pandemic, where it was harder to get people to accept the fact that I used assistive technology. So it took time and a lot of patience, and I was very lucky to have a great support team surrounding me during the K through 12 experience. Even in the harder moments, I was still able to feel like I was supported and empowered to try and do the best I can do.
Oh, and Luna?
Hi, I'm Luna Montanero. I'm 16, and I grew up in Milford, Connecticut, and I currently attend Joseph A. Foreign High School. I first had a 504 in middle school, but I have ADD, misophonia, and hyperacusis. When I was first diagnosed with misophonia, and we were looking into getting hearing aids from my sound processing disorder, that's when I got my IEP. I was very lucky because my mom is a special education teacher, so she was able to explain to me like what 504 and IEPs were, and she helped advocate with me and helped me get one, which I feel like that supported me and helped me understand everything. At first, I was very nervous to even like ask for help, since it was new to me too, and I was really nervous, but eventually got into it, and I felt really supportive, and my school has really great resources, and what else? And yeah, my school is probably, I love my school because there's so many different resources, so many different opportunities we can do, like youth advisory. And now I just enjoy advocating for myself and others with special education.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Madeline?
Hello, my name is Madeline Haggerty. I am a senior at Conard High School in West Hartford, Connecticut, and I was first diagnosed with my IEP when I was in third grade. But I never really knew what it meant to have an IEP. I didn't really understand what an IEP was until around like middle school, when I was given that like support system of being in special classes, like content support. But throughout my elementary school, it was never really explained to me like why I had my IEP or like what it did for me. I was diagnosed recently with dyscalculia, which is just a math disability that like just impairs the way I do my math. But the way that I'm supported at Conard, we have so many teachers that help me like give me extra time for my test and give me other special tools to make sure I test properly on my quizzes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Ryan, you're up next.
Hello, my name is Ryan DaCosta. I am also the Youth Engagement Coordinator for Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. I am 23 years old and I'm a junior at Mitchell College, majoring in psychology and minoring in criminal justice with a focus on being a social worker. So for me with having an IEP is I was a freshman in high school when I had one. I went into middle school and people were confused as to why I did not have one because I had so many supports that I was given in middle school, but I had no IEP or 504 when I got into high school. And it started me off not really on the best path, but also being in a public school where it was heavily academic and college oriented. I many times, even though I did have those goals, it was very difficult and I was many times overlooked and not seen as much as I could have been. And therefore I had an IEP, but it wasn't always explained to me what exactly was going on and what the complicated terms were and preparation for it. And that's just came with the territory of that school environment, that it was very much so, unfortunately, students that were the more easy going and it was accessible and they didn't have to reach out as much for help, and it made it very difficult. So when I went into the Learn schools and I went to their transition program, I was able to prepare more and be able to understand what an IEP meant. And it really helped me build my confidence being able to advocate for myself. So that's when I started to be more supported and understood, is when I found an environment and administration and special education teachers that really heard what I felt and what I needed.
Thank you so much, Zach. And Lily, you're up next. Let us know what school you're from, if you're in school right now. And if you're not in school, what are you up to?
I am in a transition academy called Highlander Transition Academy, and they teach us about various topics in school, like financial literacy and what it's like for resume building too, and how to get a job. So when I found out about my IEP, I was in third grade, and I was kind of confused as a kid, because when you're in third grade, you're kind of what does that even mean?
I think a lot of people feel that.
So it kind of made me feel isolated, because I felt like I didn't really fit in or belong. But eventually I kind of understood what it meant, and I had extra support for my unique needs, and I felt more relief and curiosity. And over time, I also learned what assistive tech was, because I am visually impaired with CVI, which is a cortical visual impairment. So it kind of messes with your eyes and your brain processing. So I use slant boards and voiceover and learn how to use devices.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Lily. And Julia. Hi, Julia. You're up next.
Hi, I'm Julia Kukta, and I go to a transition program in Old Lyme. It's called a behavioral approach. And, well, for me, I first became aware of my IEP when I was fourth grade going into middle school. And my initial reaction, I was really confused, because I didn't really know what it meant to have an IEP, or why exactly I needed one. But as I grew up and asked more questions, I realized why and what it meant. And it also helped me because I got extra time on quizzes or assignments, and it was really helpful for me.
Thank you so much for that, Julia. So it sounds like what you've all shared with us so far is you got into these programs, but there's a handful of you that you weren't quite sure exactly what was happening. So with sort of that in mind, maybe Madeline, you can share with us, were there support or conversations with either your teachers or your parents, or maybe even your peers and your friends? Were there additional support services or conversations that would have helped you understand what you were getting into?
Yeah, I definitely feel like my experience with just my education is that not every teacher understands how to accommodate certain learning needs, and I really experienced that firsthand with when around second grade I was experiencing some learning difficulties that my teacher picked up on, and instead of going through and talking me through it, she separated me from the classroom and put a divider so I could better work on my assignments. She thought it would help me, but it really just made me feel isolated. And I feel like a better discussion would have been what can we do to make you feel more accommodated in my classroom instead of separating me because I wasn't exactly every other student's same learning style.
And I'm curious to hear, maybe Philip, you're out of school for a little bit, but were there things that maybe your teachers or parents could have, I don't know if it's stepping in more or opening up more conversations to help you understand what was going on at that time?
I was lucky that when there was an issue, because of the team that I had and the parents that I have, I didn't really have to worry that much about being kept out of the dark on issues. And if I noticed one, I didn't really feel afraid to really say something. There's this moment in college that I remember vividly. I was a junior and I encountered my very first professor that didn't accept my accommodation plan. This professor just so happened to also have been my advisor at the time. So I was lucky enough at Curry, where I graduated my undergrad from, there is this PAL program. My PAL professor and I worked extremely well together. She's still helping me through grad school. And I remember that moment dealing with that professor because she had to really explain to me, it is okay to stand up to someone that isn't accepting what you need to be successful. It is okay to have to learn outside of the box. It is okay to have to learn differently than what the professor's learning style is to teach. And it was one of the most stressful times for me because I had to deal with this professor not really accepting my accommodations. So while we were advocating for that, I had to sit in his classroom for 2 classes a day. And I had to deal with him kind of getting annoyed sometimes. There's times when I would have gone for extra help and he denied me extra help because we were advocating for me to try and get the accommodations that I need. Luckily, in the end, we were able to figure that all out and the accommodations were able to happen. And luckily, he was able to learn that you can't deny someone an accommodation when all they're trying to do is just get good grades and be able to succeed. Everyone is in school for the exact same reason, and having a disability or not should not affect someone from achieving that goal.
Well, thank you so much, Philip, for sharing that with us. I'm sorry to hear that you experienced that, but also good for you for being able to stand up for yourself. And I think we all know in theory that's a really good idea, but how do you actually do it in real life? I think often enough we don't really get told on how to do that. That was certainly something that I had to learn by having situations thrown at me, and I'm kind of like, oh, what's going on? So I can't imagine what you have all gone through to get here today. And so kind of building on what Philip just shared, I do want to ask too, what is what is something that you wish perhaps your teachers or classmates better understood about special education? I mean, just on Philip's really quick story alone, we see it's a very complicated situation. Every person is different. Sometimes you meet teachers or professors who understand where you're coming from, but then sometimes you meet those educators who really have no idea what to expect. So, Ryan, because we're making eye contact, any thoughts on that?
So for me, like I was even like when I was looking at this question and I was really thinking about it, it's a very like the way I word it is a very simple, but it's a hard concept for people to wrap their heads around. And many times everyone has their own biases, and sometimes it's just looking past those things and realizing that everybody in an environment has different learning needs, but doesn't mean that they can't adapt and they change to their environment. So for me, it was like when you're in that environment, you want every student to feel included and like they belong. And so understanding that just because they have extra resources and services doesn't mean that they don't belong to be in that classroom as well. So really understanding that there's the same interests, the same things that they love to do, the same passions, ambitions, different things that they enjoy and connect with. It's not just about the disability that they have, and just understanding as individualized people and not generalizing a population to a label that they have.
Well, and then Lily, I saw you nodding a little bit earlier. Would love to also get your thoughts on, what do you hope your teachers or fellow students and friends, understood better about special education, just because there is so much under that umbrella?
Well, first, I want to say that disability doesn't identify us. We can still achieve our goals. It just might look a little different. And another thing would be special education is not a one-size-fits-all. It's personalized for each student. Students' needs and strengths. Just because someone is in special education doesn't mean they aren't capable. Everyone learns in different ways and at different paces. Having support doesn't mean we don't want to be independent. It's about learning skills to achieve our own goals. There's a lot of potential in each of us, and with the right resources and understanding, we can show it more fully.
Well, and speaking of having right resources, it sounds like many of you have found those resources and was able to, find your voice or learn how to advocate for yourself. So, Luna, I would love to get your experience on, what kind of support did you get that you felt I can advocate for myself? Like that was something that you can do. And if there was a younger person coming to you today asking you for advice on how to advocate for themselves, what would you tell them?
One thing I would tell them is don't be scared. All you're doing is advocating for yourself and just saying what you need, which will make you not only learn better in the classroom, but also it'll be helpful for both the teacher and you. When I feel a lot of my teachers have been really supportive, but I've had some that were that supportive where I'd had to kind of fight or keep advocating for and just making sure that they follow accommodations. Sometimes what I usually do is in the beginning of the year, I'll write an email to all of them, just telling them hi, my name is, and then saying that I have an IEP. I feel like that really helps me a lot because then they're able to email me any questions I have. Because some teachers, they see the accommodations, but they don't always read them the right way. Mm-hmm. So I'd be able to help clarify anything. And especially when I was younger, I was way too scared to even ask to leave the room or to go on a walk. And just once you get to the point where you're comfortable, it helps so much to be able to use the accommodations for yourself, and just knowing what's right for you is the most important.
And did you have a moment or a teacher or maybe a program that helped you feel more comfortable? You mentioned earlier you were scared. I think many of us feel very scared. This is a very scary place to be to ask questions when you don't know how to do that. Was there a teacher that helped you feel more comfortable in order to stand up for yourself?
Yeah. My learning center teacher, who's also my case manager, she has helped me and many other students so much. She's one of my favorite teachers. She's not afraid to like help me advocate for anything. She's always there and always guides me, and I always like talk to her about any issues we have. And this isn't a teacher, but a program, actually youth advisory. Once I joined it, I felt a lot more included. I was able to talk to people who also have IEPs, who were able to discuss our experiences, and that made me felt really included, like I belong.
And with that in mind too, I think I'm going to toss this question to Julia. Did you have a moment where you felt like you were afraid of standing up for yourself, but then you eventually learned that it's okay to do that and ask questions? And if a young person asks you how to do that, what would you tell them?
I was scared because I wasn't sure if asking for something different that like other kids like didn't get or something, if they would think like less of me or like not like worrying what they were going to think about me, or if I like asked for like to go to like a different space or something, like to do work because it was just quieter, like what they would think or if I would be judged. But when I was mostly when I was in like middle school, it was really hard for me because like they would teach the same stuff for all the students, but I didn't really understand it. But like I was that one kid that was like kind of scared to like raise their hand and ask like, oh, like what does that mean, or like what are we learning? Because no one else raised their hand, so I didn't really want to be the only one. Mm-hmm. And then I went home and I was talking with Mom, and I was like, so we were talking about this, but I don't really know what it meant. And then from there, Mom reached out to the school and was like, hey, like how can we help her? So then since then I went to this like special class that was more just like an extra class for like extra help, or like you could like ask like questions or get the work done. And that was really helpful for me anyway.
That was Julia Kuktup, who's the member of the Connecticut Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board. This hour, we're hearing from her and others about their experiences as students with disabilities in Connecticut. Coming up, we'll talk more about the support students need in the classroom. You can join the conversation. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. This hour, we're hearing perspectives of students with disabilities here in Connecticut. Back in November, I moderated a panel that focused on their experiences in the classroom at a special summit hosted by the state's Department of Education. We're airing some of that panel today. Philip Shankman is the advocate and presenter with the State Education Resource Center. Ryan DaCosta is the Youth Engagement Coordinator at the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. Lily Watkins is a member of the Connecticut Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board with the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. And Julia Kukta is also a member of the Connecticut Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board with the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center as well. And Luna Montanero and Madeline Haggerty are high school students in Connecticut. It sounds like you've had so much support once you were able to get that support from adults. What about your friends? You know, what are some of the things that you would suggest to or actually maybe even fellow classmates who are in the program or who has an IEP? You know, what would you do to help them be more comfortable in this space and to want to advocate for themselves, or even maybe help them learn how to ask questions? Madeline, maybe?
I just think acknowledging that special education is just a program that is just here to help you like better understand your learning, and it's not supposed to be seen as that you're less intelligent or like less worthy or even like lazy for needing these extra help. I believe that it should be like more seen as something to just help you in the classroom as like a tool, instead of like that negative connotation that I think it has with like teachers just kind of like being like, oh, you need extra help, like kind of belittling you with that aspect.
And Philip, you're nodding. Ask the question to you too. What are some things that maybe you would have liked to help your fellow classmates be more aware that they can advocate for themselves, or just be more comfortable asking questions?
First off, I was agreeing because we were talking about this actually in my master's class on Wednesday, this exact same thing. And I'm going to briefly say what I said during that class. Special ed is a support to help students that learn outside of the box get from point A to point B. Everyone is able to get to point A to point B, but for some people, they might have to go a little differently. And it's just important to know that when it comes to special education, there's a lot of biases that we all don't know that we have about certain groups. Like there's ideas that people have about being different, that being different is not okay when it actually is. Some of the best people I have ever met, some of my closest friends, are those that I've met in special ed classrooms, because the people in those classrooms are going to be able to do amazing things. And a story that I always remember is I had the opportunity to be a partner for my friend with autism who got to play Y basketball for the first time when we were in 8th grade. I will never forget that moment when he was able to score his first point, because it just shows that you can do anything that you put your mind to. And I will never forget the reaction of his parents. And like everyone just acted like he just won the Super Bowl. And it was just such a joyful moment. And that was the first time that they ever allowed sort of like someone to have sort of like a unified sports partner, which was my role that season. And it was hands down my favorite experience I ever had playing basketball.
Well, I don't know about everyone else in the room, but I just got goosebumps from that story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think we might have time for just one question. And this is something that I think I want to go down the line. Maybe we'll start with Julia, the other direction this time is, so I just posed the question of, what would you tell your friends or classmates in the program on how to advocate for yourself, or just to be comfortable in doing that? We have a room full of adults today. Well, what would you tell adults? What would you tell us to do or to share with us of how to make these environments more inclusive for you? How can we help you create community where you are comfortable in advocating for yourself and you feel safe to be yourself?
I think it is really important that the support staff takes time to understand like the individual needs and like understand what like different accommodations or whatever that each student needs, because it varies depending on the student. So to take time to understand the needs and to have lots of patience while supporting students that have special needs with like, if it's like, I don't know, like needing help, like understanding what exactly is like being taught, or like needing help with like by giving extra time, or like needing a quiet space, or just being there and like letting them know that like you're there for them and you want to help them succeed. And yeah, that's really it.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for that, Julia. And Lily, what would you tell adults in your life on better creating a more inclusive community or just a safe space for you and your friends to be in?
Empathy goes a long way. It's important that adults understand the experience of students, especially those with disabilities, and make sure you listen to them. Inclusion isn't just about being in a room. It's about making sure everyone feels valued and has a real voice in conversations and decisions. Real connections matter. Creating a sense of belonging, means building relationships that support, trust, and understand. Access and flexibility. Schools and work environments need to be adaptable to meet individuals' needs, whether it is with accommodations or opportunities. We all need advocates. Adults should be have someone who supports and engages with students to talk about their goals, no matter what challenges they face. Don't assume, ask. The best way to create an inclusive environment, the best way to create an inclusive environment is to ask the student what they need and how they want to be supported.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Lily. Ryan, Lily mentioned belonging. And so I just want to ask a very similar question to you. What would you tell the adults in your lives to create a more inclusive community and help you and your friends feel more like they belong?
This is definitely one I wrote the most about because I felt that it was the most valuable, especially when you're in a room full of adults that have important roles and that can create change within the community for students. So one of the most important things to share with adults who support students is the understanding that inclusion is not just about physical presence, but about actively fostering a culture of acceptance, respect, and participation. This means creating environments where all students feel valued for who they are, regardless of their background, abilities, or identities. It's about removing barriers to learning and engagement and ensuring that students see themselves reflected in the curriculum, in school activities, and in relationships they build with peers and adults. So how can adults do these? I had a few different recommendations for that. Encouraging diverse perspectives, actively include diverse voices in discussions, both in classrooms and in extracurricular activities. This could be through literature or various cultural perspectives, or encouraging student groups to collaborate across differences. Promoting empathy and social emotional skills, teaching students not just academic content, but how to relate and support each other. Challenging biases and stereotypes. Adults should model inclusive behaviors, challenging biases, their own and with others, and ensure that discriminatory language and actions are addressed when they're happening in the classroom. And then celebrating differences, creating opportunities to celebrate the unique contributions and backgrounds of students. This could be through cultural events, special recognition days, and supporting led initiatives that highlight diversity, and then providing access to resources and opportunities for students. In both school and community settings like work sites or in college preparation, a sense of belonging is strengthened when students feel like their identity is respected, that their voices are heard, and that they have a role in shaping the environment around them. It is important to make sure this inclusive mindset part of everyday practice, not just special events or initiatives. When students feel like they belong, they are more likely to engage, thrive, and contribute to a positive school culture and beyond. So,
thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing that with us. I think we're all taking notes here already. So, and Madeline, I want to ask you the same question too. How can adults in your life sort of help you continue to shape that safe space community for you and your friends to be in?
And Ryan, you had a lot of good points there, so that I agree with completely. So I won't repeat those, but something I think that teachers or just staff in general can do to just make children with IEPs feel like valued in the classroom and feel like that belonging is having more success stories of like adults who have had IEPs or have had learning disabilities, and really integrating that into the classroom and showing us that you can be successful even if you've had an IEP. And like, we don't really ever see that. And just showing that more would really help in creating a belonging within classrooms.
That's a really great point. Thank you so much for making that, Madeline. And Luna, what about yourself? What would you tell adults in your life to help you continue to feel comfortable in this community or help your friends feel safe?
One thing I think adults can do is kind of like a lot of you guys said, is just make sure that the kids are included, not just physically, like Ryan said, but also like mentally, because like not only just doing activities to make all the kids feel included, or like learning stuff and not just giving assignments out or like busy work. I feel like just not singling students out too, or like saying like quietly like oh, can you like checking in with their accommodations first instead of saying it out loud, because I have teachers who've done that. But definitely I feel like just checking in with the student and making sure that they feel seen and heard, and just all the students making sure that they're all comfortable in the class, not just IVs, but everyone else.
Philip, you might know what I'm going to ask you. So what would you tell your adults in your life to help continue shape a safe environment for you and your friends?
I had the opportunity today to talk to one of my mentors, and he said to me that something that he has seen in the field that he's in when it comes to diversity and belonging, when it comes to individuals with learning challenges, he sees there is a bit of a hesitation and a worry from the perspective of the adult, that the adults that are considering welcoming these students with learning challenges into their environments have a little bit of apprehension because of the unknown, because of those biases. And there is this bias with sometimes not wanting to take on that extra challenge, because some people may not want that. Some people may not want to go the extra mile, and that shouldn't be allowed to happen. And the students have a little apprehension about the unknown. And it's important to figure out a way that everyone can be seen. And if you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, that is something that'll really help everyone. And I would say, if you get to know the student outside of what it says about them on a piece of paper, then you'll be able to create a better sense of belonging. Because sometimes when you're teaching, all you can see is just that piece of paper before you meet that student. And sometimes you have preconceived notions and biases about that student already in your brain before you even meet them. There should be a habit of not sending those sheets to the teachers until after you meet the student. Because if you meet them without any preconceived notions, that'll be a better way to help foster and create a strong sense of belonging.
Well, thank you so much, Philip, for sharing that. Well, clearly today we just kind of scraped the surface of a very deep and important issue, but I do want to take a moment to thank everyone for sort of peeling back the layers for us and sharing your truth and reality. Let's give Julia, Lily, Ryan, Madeline, Luna, and Philip a round of applause. This hour, we're airing part of the recent summit hosted by the State's Department of Education. You just heard the experiences of a few students with disabilities in Connecticut, and coming up, educators share their perspectives. You can join the conversation. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Today, we're learning about the experiences of students with disabilities across Connecticut. We just heard from students themselves, and now we'll hear the perspectives of educators. Jennifer Graves is Executive Vice President of the New Haven Federation of Teachers, AFL-CIO Local 933. Shelley Davis is President of the Hartford Federation of Paraeducators, AFT, Local 2221, and also Executive Vice President of Connecticut AFL-CIO. And Karen Helene is the President of the Association of Private Special Education. All three were part of a panel I moderated at an education summit in November. Karen spoke about some of the challenges facing educators who work with students with disabilities.
I would love to pose this question to Jenny first here in terms of, we are aware of the staff shortages. We're aware of a lot of the challenges. What would you say are there other factors on a local level that you're seeing this continuing being a challenge?
I live the life of two different Connecticut's. My son is a student who has special education needs, and he goes to school in North Haven. I am a special ed teacher who works in New Haven. Those experiences are very, very different. It's really disheartening for me that, and I think we heard from our students, that you have to be very lucky in the state of Connecticut of what kind of education, the quality of intervention, and the amount of resources that you get as a student with an IEP. And it doesn't have anything to do with good teachers or bad teachers. We all want our students to succeed. I think that is the biggest barrier right now, is that there is no state guidance or legislation for caseload caps for special education or related service providers. There's not classroom size guidelines about our self-contained classrooms. There's no adult to student ratio like we have for pre-K. And when you leave it up to the local districts, you're giving districts an incredible task with the underfunding that we see in New Haven to compare educational outcomes from town to town. It's inequitable.
And Shelley, I believe you mentioned you're in the Hartford area. Is that something that you're seeing as well?
It is something in the Hartford area, but not just Hartford. It goes by zip code, and we have to be very clear on what goes on in the state of Connecticut and other states. We have a lot of systematic racism, and we need to address the issues that are at hand with our schools that are in poverty districts. First, I want to thank the commissioner and her team. I've been a paraeducator for 33 years. And it's just been since she's been in that we've had these conversations that paras have even been a part of the team or told we're part of the team. So I appreciate that, first of all. But the shortage of special education teachers and paras, it's complex, right? You have challenges influenced by several factors. It's including high stress, burnout, insufficient compensation. And that's the number one thing. The paras that I represent have 2 and 3 jobs. Not to get a yacht, not to go on vacation, but to put food on their table. They work 2 to 3 jobs. You can't do that consistently and be okay. So after the 30 years I've been here, paras are leaving. They can go other places and work. And it's not that they don't love the children. We fight to get the children their IEP services. When you're working with a child and they have an IEP, because this is why we're here, but there's no speech pathologist, there's no teacher because they're pulling them to cover other classes because we have a shortage. The story and the only thing we need is resources, resources, resources. And we have to have competitive salaries and a culture that values the contributions of the special educators that make a difference in all these children's lives. We heard from all these students today. Now, the difference for me, there wasn't a whole lot of diversity here today because I think we missed out on a perspective of the children that look like me, if they could sit here and say how lucky they were. And so for the children that were here, those stories touch my heart. Like you said, goosebumps. But I want to talk about the children that we don't talk about, the children that we don't see, the children that nobody speaks of because there's nobody there. We need to do better in addressing the the disparities, and ensuring that special educators feel valued and supported. And I think that's the number one thing since the pandemic. The paraeducators I represent don't feel supported. They don't feel they're given resources, and they don't even feel valued. It's hard to stay out sick without hearing that you can't stay out sick because the kids need you. So we have to do something for the mental health of our special educators and all of our people that are in the school. We have to expound on that because we're missing that. So I love all these conversations, but we all need to have the governor do something about the guardrails and loosen up some money here in the state of Connecticut. And I think then and only then can we move forward.
You mentioned expounding, and I think you did kind of bring out a solution towards the end. But are there any concrete things that you think teachers and, the governor and on many levels in the state, what are some priorities you think that needs to be prioritized in order to meet every single kid's needs?
So priorities, we have one of the good things that have been the social emotional learning that give our kids value and give them the essentials for their academic growth. We have collective efforts of organizations, but what we need to have the governor do is understand that we have the money here in the state of Connecticut. We do. You all know we have the money. We need to let that money loose so we can educate, take care of the children here. This is our priority. It was a couple of years back, we didn't have any money, right? So, and that's what they told us for raises, all of us, right? There's no money, can't do anything for you. Last year, what they told us legislatively, we do not value what you bring every day. That's what they said. There was nothing else to take away from that. So we need everybody to acknowledge the people sitting here, the paraeducators that go to work every day to take care of children that are vulnerable. And we're not just talking parents, we're talking everybody in the school system, and people that feed our students, that know the children that can't have certain foods. They need to be commended. But we don't talk about those issues. So I think we all need to go see the governor and let him know the things we need in the state of Connecticut, not just Hartford, not just Bridgeport, not just Danbury. And it shouldn't matter the zip code in this state of Connecticut, one of the richest states. We should be given the things that our children need for tools. Resources, resources, resources. Every IEP that we have in this state should be filled. It's not because we don't have the people. So we're neglecting what these children are supposed to have. And we're the ones that have been tirelessly speaking for that, sometimes on deaf ears, or we have other priorities. So to answer your question, and I know we need to make education the priority in this state of Connecticut, not for some, but for all of our students, all of them, regardless of disabilities, what they look like, where they come from, what their parents do, all of them.
That was Shelley Davis, president of the Hartford Federation of Paraeducators, AFT, Logo 2221, and also executive vice president of Connecticut AFL-CIO. She was joined by Jennifer Graves, who's the executive vice president of the New Haven Federation of Teachers, AFL-CIO Local 933, and Karen Helene is president of the Association of Private Special Education. All three were part of a panel I moderated at an education summit in November. I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Tess Terrible and Meg Dalton. Our technical producer is Dylan Reyes. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app, and thank you all so much for listening.